Hey Pearl, alright, so here's your past life spread. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at where you were, what you did with the majority of your time, an important day with the relationship and feelings involved, another important day, the death and lesson learned. And we'll get hints of time throughout usually, but here we're going to flip the time card because we are going to this place here, which I'll explain in a second. So all I'm going to do is relay to you the images and impressions that I am getting, and your job is going to be to try to make connections where you can based off of what we go over here in your current life, and I'll try to help however I can with that, okay? So let's start. First we're going to go to Atlantis and Lemuria card. So this is the where. Now this can also mean a legendary place or a place long forgotten or that kind of thing. This feels like we're dealing with Atlantis. Atlantis has more of a kind of an individual pull, whereas Lemuria is more community. Atlantis has more masculine energy, where Lemuria has more feminine. So there's some differences, and it feels very much like we're being pulled to Atlantis. It feels like I'm looking at a busy life, and it feels like we're looking at a male life as well. So they're pulling me into his young adult years, and it feels like we're starting at the beginning of his career is how they're showing it. And let's see, I'm trying to there's something about what he's wearing. It's like a lab coat of sorts, so it feels kind of like we're looking at a uniform. We're looking at someone who is groomed, kind of polished in a way. Not polished in the sense of a suit, but like groomed is the best word. Clean. And that's part, it feels like it's part of his life is cleanliness. Because it's proper for what he's working with. This is what it feels like. Okay, so it also feels like he's working on something by himself, yet surrounded by people who are aware of what he does or do the same thing that he does, but on their own. Sometimes coming together to get each other's like 2 cents about it is what it feels like. So how you can make connections to this, for example, would be 1, do you have any connection with Atlantis? Do you know of Atlantis? If you don't, go look it up, go feel it out, see how it feels to you when you learn about Atlantis a little bit more in depth than what you might have heard in mainstream, you know, like Disney movies kind of thing. It feels like, again, so we're looking at the male life, so that can speak to you in a couple of ways. 1, if you've chosen to come back into your current life as a female, and we're looking at a male life, it can explain either 1, why you may have masculine tendencies, such as, you know, were you a tomboy when you grew up? Did you like to not do the girly things or wear the girly things, or were you more, I guess, outspoken or aggressive or expressive? On the other hand, because we're looking at a male here, you can make opposite connections, such as in this current life, you can be very feminine, very girly, drawn to feminine energy or feminine ways of appearing or construing yourself, that kind of thing. So you want to make certain connections there. It can also mean a nice balance between both. Like you have a handle on both your masculine and feminine energies, and you feel it and you feel balanced. So it can mean any of those things, but it's being brought up for a reason. So make connections there where you can. Okay, also the cleanliness aspect. In this current life, is there anything, are you pulled towards cleanliness? Is that important to you? Is it something you notice about people, whether they're well groomed or how they keep themselves, their car, their house, that kind of thing, or yourself, how you present yourself? Is presentation important to you? If it is, that would be a direct connection. You can make an opposite connection because in this life, having experience where presentation is important and cleanliness, grooming, that kind of thing is very important. Here, in your current life, you could be someone who just is like kind of rough and tumble, and you know, you don't care, you know, it is what it is, and you don't really judge people based on appearance or notice it very much. So you can make a direct connection or opposite connection for all of this stuff. So keep that in mind as you continue to make connections. And keep making connections with this card however you can. But we're going to go ahead and move on to what you do with the majority of your time. This card here is the Laborer card. and it has a feel to it that's not manual labor. It feels more like just a very hard worker, overworking, overachieving, non-stop working is what it feels like. And it feels like when I saw this man in a coat, it didn't feel like we're looking, it didn't feel like we're working in a laboratory, like a science, like a chemistry lab. It felt more like we're dealing with someone who's wearing a coat, like in a sense of almost felt like a chef. It feels like we're dealing with science and food put together. So it feels like we're looking at someone who's very innovative and creative and food-based. So all those things, are you pulled towards creating your own concoctions? It could be in the kitchen. It doesn't have to be. It could be just so you could be a very creative person with your hands and mind creating things. Maybe you like the idea of inventing something. Maybe you find that you have an entrepreneurial spirit. Okay. And then, so keep in mind too, there is something about having an environment where this is done in such a way that it turns out the best it can. So, can you make any connections when it comes to how you feel about having your own private space? Are you someone that needs space or your own room or office? If anything, I feel like this would be a message coming through that if you don't have your own private space, to go ahead and create your own space. It can be a closet space where you turn it into your own little meditation sitting space. It could be an altar. It can be just basically your own private space where you can get away, take a breather, no one will bother you. I feel like that would be important for you for whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's progress forward spiritually or get a clarity of mind or learn how to handle your stress. Just ways of coping by yourself. It would be wise of you to consider trying to carve out a space of your own wherever you can. If you don't have a space, it might even do you good to go rent a room at the library and, bring a book and a blanket and just curl up for 2 hours. You know what I mean? Just like get away. Like it feels like you need your own space to get away from influential like energies from other people. Not that anyone's like bad, it's just that you may be, if you find that you are someone that is easily influenced or you want to, like, let's say you need time alone and then someone you love needs your help and they don't ask you, but you'll automatically volunteer your time. That's when you need to stop automatically volunteering your time and pay attention to yourself and choose your needs over others' wants. So there's this thing where it's not selfish if you're choosing your needs over others' wants versus putting your wants over others' needs. You see what I'm saying? So make sure you realize that self-care is not selfish. It's required, necessary, and definitely carve some time out for yourself. If you can't do every day, do every week, get away, whatever it is. There needs to be some space for yourself. Keep making connections here because we're also talking about someone who works really hard, overworks. So it could be the same thing in this life where you find that you really do push yourself, you work hard, you overwork, you might work hard for other people. More, like you just might push yourself, whatever it is, if you have a regular job to, please your boss or whatever it is, you might be a people pleaser. And that would be a direct connection, also a message for you to back off if that's the case. Now, you also might be making an opposite connection where you came back into this life to just cruise by, be lazy, and enjoy your own pace. And if that's the case, that's perfectly fine. If that's the case, it would be wise of you not to get hard on yourself or not to be frustrated with yourself or not to take anything personally if somebody ever says anything about that, because no one really knows what you're going through. So if your soul decided to come back in this life and be a little lazy, lazy is a bad word, but you know what I mean, like you just don't maybe have super ambitious whatever, or you're not a workaholic and you're around people who are. Don't let others influence you. Go at your own pace. Do what's comfortable for you. But if what's comfortable for you is being an overachiever and overworking, you need to learn to take space and time for yourself that has nothing to do with work. And that also means work if you're a mom and there's a family involved and you're a hardworking mom, so to speak. That too, you need you time, okay? Keep that in mind and keep making connections where you can with this card, okay? So, oh, actually, also with this card, I do want to mention, let's say you were born into a family that was well off in this current life, and you've had things quote unquote easy, right? If you have any guilt about that kind of thing, it's time to let go of guilt, because don't forget, you chose to do that for a reason. It's because you worked so hard here, you see? So there's always a reason for everything, and you should never hate certain parts of yourself just because you don't understand them and because they don't match up with what other people consider to be quote unquote successful or good or proper. You know what I mean? Make sure, again, you're living for you. So the first important day, what kind of day it is, is the Conquered, They Have Come, or Welcome card. And usually it means there's new people coming into the scene, and it's either they're coming to take over or they're coming as an ally. They're coming welcomed, or they're coming where you want to ward them off, right? So the relationship involved is the friends card. Friends card. And the feeling here is pity. So what it feels like is, it feels like we're skipping ahead and something has happened in your life. All your hard work has paid off, and it feels like you've been accepted almost like to a more privileged position or a promotion, recognized for something you did. And it feels like what you did was kind of like, it was very innovative, creative, something new, and it's almost like you came up with a new dish or a new food or a new food group. Basically almost like introducing a new flavor. It's a big deal. And it feels like you did it by accident. So when I laid these cards down, it felt like it was a mistake, but the mistake ended up flourishing and making a life that you always wanted for yourself. And so there's a big lesson in that, which is, be open-minded and allow there to be space for mistakes, because you never know what's going to happen from it. It can change your life in the best ways possible. Many artists, they create their best masterpieces from mistakes. Like they say, oh, this mistake turned into this, turned into that. It's like a domino effect, which is interesting because the term domino effect came up in the last reading too for some reason. So that's interesting. But it really is important to realize that one thing can start a chain of events that you don't see coming, and that thing that starts a chain of events that leads to something great a lot of times is disguised as something you don't like, or something that feels bad, or it could be like where an argument with someone turns in, again, the domino effect. You argue with someone, it's never fun to have confrontation and argue, but because of the argument, you leave the house and you go to a coffee shop and you strike up a conversation with someone who happens to know a publisher who is looking for a certain author, and what do you know, you're writing a book at the time, just like, you know what I mean? So you never know what's going to happen from mistakes or from things that you construe as negative. Give it a chance. I'm not saying stay in a bad relationship where there's abuse. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you feel like you made a mistake, or you feel like, ugh, do I have to go here today? Do I have to do this? Just bear with it and go and move through it. Try to leave the icky feeling, like the negative, mindset. Try to remind yourself, okay, I really don't know where this is going to lead today. It could be great. So there's this great thing coming into my mind, is this thing that I came across a while back, and it's this saying, I get to, instead of I have to. Whenever you feel like you're about to, if it's a situation where you feel like you're going to say, oh, I have to go to his baseball game. Oh, I have to watch the kids, whatever it is. Instead, change that inner language to I get to. I get to go to the baseball game. That language change is everything. So what's coming through here really feels like you need to just take a look at what you consider, like how you define certain concepts such as success or abundance or happiness or love. And you can redefine them with your own definition, not the definition you were fed from birth. So make sure you're going through and assessing all your belief systems and just assessing yourself and how you feel about certain things. And make sure it's coming from you and not something that was spoon-fed to you your whole life. We all have to do this. So I feel like that's coming up for a reason. The pity card comes in because it's almost like you're feeling kind of pitiful for yourself because you're like, oh, this amazing thing happened and I didn't even intend for it to happen. Ugh, I suck because I can't come up with this on my own. It was a mistake. And that's not the right mindset. It's showing you this as a message to make sure you're coming at certain concepts in your life, actions that you do, certain results that happen because of your actions, whatever it is. Make sure you're coming at it with a more positive mindset, with a larger perspective. Don't just immediately jump to, oh, this is a coincidence or a mistake or whatever. There are no mistakes, okay? Everything has a purpose. Remember that and look at everything that happens in your life with the concept, this has a purpose. There's a lesson in it. Find the lesson. That's going to make things so much smoother. You're going to feel yourself propelling forward on so many levels if you're able to catch yourself with certain mindsets and switch gears. That's what I feel like is coming through here. You don't ever need to pity yourself because there's always going to be a lesson in it. I'm not saying you do pity yourself. I'm just saying you never have to go your automatic response does not have to be negative. You can learn to naturally have a positive reaction if you take the time to learn the discipline for your mind in that way, okay? Keep that in mind. Keep making connections where you can here, okay? The next important day, here is the trauma card. So there's a trauma happening. The karmic card is involved. Usually we see the karmic card when we're dealing with someone in this life who is showing up in your current life, okay? So that means when we go through this, see if anyone comes to mind that you know in your current life that just kind of pops up in mind as we go through this. And the feeling here, is torn. The feeling is torn. So I'm trying to see what's happening here. There's something happening that has nothing to do with your work. You're so focused on your work that all of a sudden you get hit by something in left field. It feels like it's close to home. It's almost like, okay. So what it feels like is either it's a family member or we're going straight to a parent. I feel like one of your parents dies unexpectedly, and it feels like you didn't get closure with that parent. There's something about not enough time spent with them. This is a huge day because you finally understand what's really important and you feel like it's too late. But if you look at it from a bigger perspective, let's say it's your dad that dies. It feels like it's the father figure dying. Your father figure on a soul level knew his exit day, and he knew that it would be this way in order to trigger these feelings in you, in order to open you up to see what is truly important in life. This is coming through as a message to make sure that you remember and keep in focus what is truly important in life. And what's truly important is it's never a petty thing. It's never holding a grudge. It's never work over your relationships. I'm not talking just romantic. All relationships. Relationships that are important to you, whether it's family, kids, whatever. But also, work is not more important than self-care or self-love. Make sure you are prioritizing yourself over others who are prioritizing themselves, and also over work, over things that are human, not emotional, so to speak, okay? Remember, we're driven to achieve things in life. Make sure you're redefining what achievement is, what success is. What is successful? Is it your health, or is it getting a star, a plaque on the wall for being, a smart cookie at work? You know what I mean? What's more important? And hey, if you find the work thing more important, okay. then that means you're prioritizing you and what you find more important, which is work. But most of the time it's just making sure that this is really about you, making sure you're prioritizing you. When you prioritize you, then you're not going to resent other people for taking your time or for, helping them in any way. Even if you're already a natural giver or people pleaser and you like helping people, it gets to a point where you're going to feel resentment because you're not taking care of yourself. I feel like this is all about self-care. So just make sure you're going into yourself and doing the work and not putting it off anymore. If you feel like you've been putting off some self-discovery or self-work or facing certain fears or processing certain things from your past or whatever, not dwelling in your past, but processing them and moving forward and forgiving, if you feel like you've been putting any of that stuff off, it's time to look at it now, because I feel like it's going to help you in a big way with this karmic thing. I feel like as soon as you take the initiative and step towards dealing with everything that you may even be in denial of, because it's really easy to kind of repress things. People repress things all the time. But if you take the time to look within yourself and find those things, bring them out, play with them, deal with them, be honest with yourself, you're going to find the right people are going to come into your life, and the wrong people, so to speak, even though there's, no one's wrong, you learn lessons all the time, but the ones that aren't building you up and giving you good energy, they're going to find their way out of your life, so to speak. So keep that in mind, and that's also important that you do keep the right energy around you. Don't let anyone with the wrong energy or that feels icky into your circle. I don't care if it's family. It's like a lot of people, they choose family that's really tough for them so that they can learn to break away when it's the right time. If you ever feel like it's time to break away from someone because they're affecting you or holding you back in some way or holding you down or keeping you from being who you really want to be, in any kind of way, then that energy it's done. You just have to take the step of letting it go and moving away as well. You know what I mean? So keep that in mind. Keep making connections where you can. This can also deal with, hold on, there's something about the father figure, the relationship, feeling guilty, loyal. If you deal with any issues having to do with loyalty and guilt, like keeping up a schedule with someone even though you're done with that routine, or again the people pleaser coming up, if you have a fear of being alone, so you're not letting go of people who aren't the greatest energy for you just because you don't want to be without them, because you don't know what it would be like to be without them and it can feel scary, don't let that stop you. It's time to face that stuff as well if that connects with you. So keep making connections where you can, okay, with these kinds of things. And again, if anyone came up with this card, if anyone came up when we were talking about that, and anyone comes to mind, you got to trust that that's who we're dealing with here, okay? And it's for people might seem like your enemy, but on a soul level, they're teaching you a lesson, and for that we can thank that person, send them love, and let them be on their way. It doesn't mean you owe them anything. It just means that they're there it's a lesson, you learned it, you don't owe them your time or energy anymore, okay? Keep that in mind. Let's go to the death. So here we have the disease and illness card, and I feel like it's just basically, it's nothing terrible. It's just like an accumulation of a lifetime playing with what you played with. It feels like there's a lot of eating involved and a lot of experimental eating. And it feels like it's like kind of like what we would consider too much sugar would lead to like just like clogged arteries and a downhill battle in health. It feels like whatever you came up with here, you overindulged. So it feels like there's a feeling of overindulgedness that didn't hit you until you were older. So it feels like someone here, it feels like we're looking at this person in their 50s. I don't know if that's how, I don't know how the ages were back then, you hear about all kinds of things like, oh, they lived till like 300, like, I don't know. But he looks and feels like what we would consider someone in their 50s, which I think is pretty young. And it feels like what we would consider clogged arteries, just unhealthiness based on overindulgence of something that almost like he was unaware that it would cause that. So in your current life, if you find that you have certain food allergies or sensitivities to certain things, that would be a connection. It could be a connection just based on, you died from certain, by digesting certain things, so your soul memory would want to hold off digesting certain things in this life. So almost like to keep it from happening again. So if you're experiencing anything like that, any health issues when it comes to digestion or digestive, it's hard to say, digestive, oh God, issues, so to speak, you know what I'm saying. Dealing with anything like, eating, what's it called, like just food going down, stomach issues, bathroom issues, bowel, that kind of stuff, just the whole system of eating, so to speak. If you have any sensitivities or issues with that, it could come from here. I feel like there's one more. Also, if you're experiencing any obesity or any weight issues, it could be from here as well. Because again, there was an overindulgence. Though I don't see him being overweight, so to speak. I feel like I don't think he was, but these things can translate into different ways with analogies and metaphors and stuff. So what's overindulgent here, even if he's not large in your current life, if you find that you do have more weight than you like from overindulgence, it can come from here as well. So keep that in mind. And once you're aware of where it can come from, if it resonates with you, you're able to get rid of it. You're able to let go of it on a spiritual, emotional level. And you should see some changes once you start the process of letting go in that way. So here, what's really interesting is the simplicity as your lesson. Your lesson is simplicity. And it's really funny because what this is dealing with in this life here that we're looking at, there was one choice, one overall choice that this man could have made. And it had to do between work and between relationships, or between work and between, basically prioritizing one over the other. And it's almost like he didn't even realize what he was doing until he lost the thing that matters most. And so I feel like this translates into your current life kind of in a way where it's like a message that you don't have to worry about that happening again, as long as you open your eyes. Because you knowing about this now, it can't get by you again unless you willingly play dumb, unless you willingly allow it to happen. So it's like, now that this is in your awareness, make sure that you are prioritizing the right thing, whether it's your health, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your happiness, or if it is your work. If your work gives you health, happiness, and relationships, so to speak, if it makes you feel complete in that way, then that's the right thing too. But just make sure that you are checking in with yourself, taking your own temperature, so to speak, when it comes to what should you prioritize? What is really truly heart-centeredly meant to be prioritized in your current life? Make sure you're making the right choice this time around, because it's almost like it feels like you have more of a choice. Whereas this person, it was almost like too late, but it's not a bad thing because it was too late here, so that in your current life it wouldn't be too late. So you can learn the lesson. And a lot of times we do see lessons overlapping many lives. So you're not behind or anything. You're right on track. Just make sure that you're prioritizing the right thing, taking care of yourself, making the right choices, okay? Alright, so keep making connections where you can with the simplicity card too, okay? So there's your past life. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're able to make some connections here. And thanks for letting me read you.